Did you know that in the Far East, there have been very unique dietary principles that were recommended from both doctors as well as even people who were like mystics and holy people and monks? This very specific kind of diet was often recommended for those who wanted to live a long life. It wasn't indicated for those who want to be bodybuilders or shredded with six packs or Victoria's Secret models, although that can work too. It was primarily for people who wanted to feel the best and live the longest. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Alex Heyne, board licensed doctor of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, and author of the health book Master the Day. So let's get in. So when we talk about the high level of what is traditional Chinese medicine, dietetics, and nutrition look like, ancient people had obviously observed that certain foods were correlated with certain illnesses, and certain foods were correlated with fixing certain illnesses. I mean, one famous doctor, Sun Tzu Miao, this guy lived like 500, 600 years after Christ. He had observed that people who consume lots of kelp and algae and seaweed actually didn't develop goiters, thyroid issues, at nearly the level that people who weren't consuming it developed. And that even consuming it was a treatment and a cure for those illnesses. That's 1500 years ago. That's pretty damn impressive if you ask me. But when it comes to the actual dietetics advice, there's two unique aspects to traditional Chinese medicine. The first is what we call the qi. The qi is really what's often called the temperature of the food. And an example of that, hot would be something like spicy chili soup. Cold would be something like maybe lemon water. The second thing is the wei, which is the flavor. These are like the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, spicy, that kind of thing. And what ancient people had noticed was that the qi and the wei, the temperature and the flavor, were often indicative for certain illnesses. And they would often treat and potentially prevent certain illnesses or cause them if you ate too much of one flavor or one temperature. Now, like anything, they had observed a lot of bioindividuality, just big divergence in terms of what people's individual genetics called for, as well as what their current lifestyle called for, and then even the current disease state called for. You know, this is like high-level individualized medicine at its core. Ultimately, it has to be custom tailored to the patient. When we talk about genetics and constitution, we're often talking about two on a spectrum and then one in the middle. On one side of the spectrum is what we call the cold and deficient constitution. If we want to stereotype, this is like the thin, pale, anemic woman with very, very poor digestion. On the other side, we have the fat, sweaty American businessman. He likes eating steaks and Italian food and drinks 3 glasses of wine and 3 cups of coffee in the morning. And as a result, this guy manifests with a lot of what we see visibly, which is warmth and heat. And actually his physical body temperature runs warmer. Could even not be genetic, could just be from the amounts of inflammation going on there and the actual body fat itself. Now, in between, we have a lot of people who have an overall moderate body temperature and body type, but they may have, let's say, a little bit of acid reflux or a little bit of chronic sinus problems. So there is some heat in the system there. The essential piece of this dietary advice is that we need to actually tailor it towards where you are right now. Now, these two principles are one of 5 or 10 that I recommend learning in your healing journey. And if you guys haven't checked it out, I actually have a free 7-day email series and a free root cause quiz, and it's just called The Forgotten Science of Healing. You'll punch in your email, get that free root cause quiz, and we've actually put together this 10-page handout that will go meticulously through certain symptoms, certain organs, and will help you try to figure out, according to traditional Chinese medicine, what is the root cause of your symptoms? And really, what is the main reason that you're having these symptoms? Go through that, get the quiz, you'll get a 7-day email series alongside it, and we will go and break down some of the key essential healing principles of traditional Chinese medicine. Now, the third piece is that the diet has to actually match not only your constitution, but also your current lifestyle. So, for example, I am the thin, more pale-faced kind of constitution. We say this constitution genetically has spleen stomach deficiency. So these people tend to naturally not gain weight because they naturally don't have the biggest appetite, and they naturally tend to suffer with a weak digestive function. You would think it just ends there, right? But it doesn't, because I went through a period of very high stress overworking, and suddenly I found myself having acid reflux half the days of the week. And that was coming not only because I was eating heavier than I should have been, but because I was also overworking. And so the amount of hours, the percentage of my day my body was under stress, was just simply too much to actually process and digest food. I mean, there are studies showing that even just eating while like watching a video will decrease your pancreatic enzyme production by a certain percentage. So eating in peace is the best for your GI. But this is an example of inherently weak constitution for digestion. Where your constitution was genetically is a piece, but it is only the default template, because whether it's through a great lifestyle, a horrible lifestyle, or a great lifestyle but stress you couldn't control, these things will affect your actual current template. Now let's go through sort of like a sample daily routine for someone who has what we call spleen qi deficiency. Spleen qi deficiency, we have lots of videos on it, but what it is effectively is usually someone who has low pancreatic enzymes, digestive enzymes. They often have lower levels of stomach acid, so they often have food sitting in their stomach, and often they have problems with absorption in the small intestine. What kind of diet benefits this kind of person the most? If we're talking about the general principles, mostly what we mean is the good diet focuses on warm, cooked, and easily digestible foods. Those three things should be your core focus. And avoiding raw foods like raw salads or smoothies, cold things like smoothies, and then greasy or overly sweet foods like sweets or honey or any kind of sugar in excess, because that will often worsen, for example, chronic clearing of the throat. Here's like an example daily meal that I would recommend. For breakfast, focus on either congee or oatmeal with cinnamon, ginger, and just a little bit of honey. If you're prone to excessive throat clearing, stay away from anything sweet, but a little bit of honey and fruit is fine. In terms of what to drink, focus on warm drinks like ginger or even chamomile tea. If we're talking about snacks, warming foods can be things like, for example, a handful of walnuts or almonds. You can even steam sweet potatoes. Those root vegetables are very good for what we call spleen pancreas. For lunch, I would recommend meat, or if you're vegetarian, you could do tofu, so like a chicken or tofu soup with carrots, shiitake mushrooms, and if you really want to make it Chinese medicine, put a couple goji berries in there. You could do steamed rice or steamed quinoa with stir-fried veggies like leafy greens, spinach, Swiss chard, kale, bok choy, with, for example, a little bit of garlic. If you want a little bit of a sweeter afternoon snack, having something like apples or pears with a little bit of cinnamon, and also if you wanted, a touch of honey there. And then for dinner, focusing on like sauteed meats, rice, and grains. You can have shredded chicken, lightly cooked zucchini or pumpkin, and again, a warm herbal tea. You could do licorice if you wanted. You could do ginger again. So in general, there are 4 key guidelines. Focus more on warm and cooked meals. Soups and stews and congees are really great. Include what we call sweet and neutral foods. Well, that means things like sweet potatoes, squash, rice. Use warming spices. For example, ginger, cinnamon, cardamom. And then finally, avoid cold, raw, greasy, and damp forming foods. Stay away from dairy, stay away from ice cream, and stay away, of course, from like excessive sugar. That's sort of a good overview of what I would recommend as a daily sort of meal plan. Now don't forget guys, I work with a limited number of new patients every month in my clinic in Los Angeles or virtually via telemedicine. If you want to learn more or reach out, just go to dralexheyne.com/clinic. We also have the information, our phone number, and our contact info for the clinic at my practice right below this video. So if you really want tailored, customized formulas and very specific advice to your situation, I mean, there's really no other way to do it besides working one-to-one. So I'd highly recommend reaching out if you want to do that. And don't forget to check out the free email series, The Law Science of Healing. That's a 7-day email series. You're also going to get an entirely free root cause quiz. It's like a great 10-page handout. Again, that's the first link below this video, or dralexheyne.com/quiz. And then before you go, I have another really great video on healing with traditional Chinese medicine in terms of diet right here.